updated classified intel report saying that the U.S. Department of Energy has assessed that the source of the COVID-19 pandemic likely came from a China lab leak.
2 years later.
And then there's this theory, widely debunked. This paper from 2 Chinese researchers that says it is plausible that the virus leaked accidentally from one of 2 labs near the Wuhan seafood market.
Coronavirus was man-made in a lab in Wuhan, China. And yet this week, Donald Trump is still pushing the debunked bunkum, despite his own intelligence community's findings that is simply not true.
The Wuhan lab, we know that it's been debunked that this virus was man-made or modified or anything like that.
Tom Cotton a couple of days ago spouting a conspiracy theory that the Chinese made this virus up.
You have the lab in Wuhan.
There you go. In a lab, you have Rush Limbaugh every day, Presidential Medal, Freedom of Honor. It's hard to say this is the most reckless thing he's ever done.
Those same agencies now have been tapped with investigating one of Trump world's most favorite conspiracy theories. New York Times reports this, quote, senior Trump administration officials have pushed American spy agencies to hunt for evidence to support an unsubstantiated theory that a government lab in Wuhan, China was the origin of the coronavirus outbreak.
Tom Cotton, one of Donald Trump's staunchest allies in the Senate, suggested that the virus might have originated in a high-security biochemical lab in China. In the 1980s, I remember when the far left trafficked in rumors about HIV having been invented in CIA labs. The far right has now found its own virus conspiracy theory.
All right, guys, so what you just saw there is a prime example of something I say all the time on my channel when it comes to facts versus conspiracy theories politically, right? Generally speaking, when the right makes a statement about something, it is a conspiracy theory until it is eventually proven to be a fact, okay? We've seen this happen time and time again, okay? When the left said something, it is a fact until it's eventually proven to be a conspiracy theory. And this topic, this subject of the COVID lab leak theory and the origins of COVID-19 is another example of the left and something they've stated from the beginning, which is that it could not have came from a lab, that it was a natural occurrence, right? They said it was like a bat farm or something like that, a wet market or something. That being initially treated as a fact, and now that is a conspiracy theory, right? And something that the right was saying from the beginning, which is that, hey, it seems like this is more likely to be something that may be man-made, something that may be engineered in a lab or something, China, Wuhan, right? That now is going from a conspiracy to, it seems like it's basically going to be a fact, right? Again, common occurrence, right? The Alex Joneses of the world seem to be on to something, okay? So that being said, again, we got to talk about the response from the mainstream liberal media, okay? Because, of course, there's a whole lot of copium going on with the fact that, once again, they have proven to be wrong. But first, we got to check in with the White House, who was pressed directly on the fact that anybody who questioned the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic was called a conspiracy theorist.
There was not so long ago a point where anyone asking the question of whether a lab leak was a credible theory that should be looked into, you know, a lot of those people were derided as fringe, you know, conspiracy theorists. So are there lessons learned, you know, looking back about how we discuss theories when we don't have all of the answers?
So here's what I can tell you is the president's commitment to getting to the bottom of this, right? That is what's the most important, so that we can, you know, we can share this with Congress, we can share this with the American people. That is why he asked the IC to do its work. And right now, there is no consensus. There is no consensus. You heard this from Jake Sullivan yesterday. You heard this from my colleague just moments ago. And we're going to do everything that we can. The president is asking his team to do everything that they can to figure out where it originated, because of what could potentially happen next, because of the potential of having another pandemic. And I think that's what's most important.
Now, that is the answer from the Biden administration, which is that, hey, there's no consensus, okay? Even though we called everybody a conspiracy theorist, we smeared them as crackpots for suggesting that, you know, COVID could have come from a lab in China. There's no consensus, right? There's no consensus yet, okay? This is what they're saying. Now, in the mainstream liberal media, on the other hand, there are some people, like the late night comedians, the washed up comedians, really, that are trying to downplay these findings from Biden's energy department, And also, I mean, as well too as the FBI. The FBI also agrees that this most likely, came from a lab in China. They're trying to downplay it and say, well, the Energy Department, they have low confidence, right? This is a low confidence finding.
How can you conclude something with low confidence? That's not a conclusion. I think the word you're looking for is guess. By the way, conclusion with low confidence is such a boy move. You know what I mean? Like you're dating someone and they go, babe, what are we? And you're like, Sarah, I can tell you for sure, I don't know. Now, even though they had low confidence, the Department of Energy came out and said COVID was a lab leak. And now every idiot I went to high school with is like, apologize to me right now, Hassan. I told you I was right. And if your hand is bigger than your face, you're gay. Now, to everybody touchdown dancing about this, how long have you been rocking with the Department of Energy? Oh, you've been with them since day one? Hey, what's your second favorite report from the Department of Energy? Now, personally, I love their report on walk-in freezers and coolers, but hey, that's just me, because I'm a real one. But here's the key detail everybody's forgetting while they got the Twitter fingers. The Energy Department is one of 9 intelligence groups that have assessed COVID's origins. 2 have said lab leak, 5 say it came out of natural causes, and 2 say they don't know. And you know what? I personally side with them. I don't know what the is going on. FBI says this, NIC says that. I'm holding out until the DMV chimes in. Okay? All right.
Another surprising development this weekend. The Department of Energy released a new report saying a lab leak is the most likely origin of the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, there it is. Chinese wet markets, you're off the hook. Let's order a round of pangolin poppers for the table. I love a nice plate of wet apps. Now, if you're can we get some civet fingers, please? Now, if, like me, you're wondering why the Department of Energy is the one making this judgment, it's because that agency oversees a network of U.S. national laboratories, some of which conduct advanced biological research. No. Bad Energy Department. No biolabs until you finish building your electric car charging stations. Stay in your lane. You don't see the Census Bureau building nukes. But whatever. Who am I to say? They're the Energy Department. I'm sure they're smart. They wouldn't release these findings unless they were absolutely confident. What's that? They made their judgment with low confidence. Yeah. You can tell by the way they delivered the news. Maybe it was a lab leak. That's stupid. Forget I said anything.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that, right? The late night comedians, instead of just, kind of attacking the people who basically smeared everybody as a conspiracy theorist for suggesting that, hey, maybe this could have came from a lab in Wuhan. No. What they do is that they actually just, attack the Energy Department for concluding something that the mainstream liberal media and all of the mainstream liberal media colleagues, propagandists, said was a conspiracy theory with no evidence, right? It's not like these people had any evidence that it actually came from a wet market or that it was something that occurred naturally, right? They didn't have any real evidence to support that. They were just going along with Lord Fauci, right? Because what Lord Fauci says is truth, right? It's gospel, right? But it turns out that once again, like everything else Fauci was saying, whether it be about, mask or the vaccine and all the other stuff they were telling us, turns out that he was not as accurate, okay, as, they advertise him to be, right, when it comes to some of these issues, right? But hey, some people in probably not the mainstream liberal media, but the progressive media, okay, the progressives who, used to be distrustful of government, okay, when it came to these types of issues. Now, they always love big government when it comes to economic stuff. They love government when it comes to that. But when it came to this type of stuff, progressives, they used to be more distrustful of the government. Now, all of a sudden, since the pandemic, they've grown to love the government and everything that the government says, right? Anything the government tells you to do, they were totally fine with it, whether it be lockdowns, the vaccine, censorship, war, the war in Ukraine, right? Progressives went along with it, right? Because they don't want to be seen as being aligned with Trump, right? We don't want to be seen as agreeing with Trump and the right. So therefore, we're going to go along with whatever the government says, okay? And the Young Turks seem to be particularly hurt by their decision to do that, right? As they are now having some major cope with the fact that they seem to have bought into this idea that it was impossible. It was impossible for the lab leak theory to be true because Trump said it. So now they don't know who to believe. Take a look.
Down that it was natural and not from a lab. We'll get back to that in a second.
Actually, can we address that right now?
Yeah.
Because one thing that's become increasingly clear to me, especially over the last year, is that I don't know who to trust.
Yeah.
Right? I certainly don't trust reporters. Because reporters treated this initially as if it was nothing more than a crazy, unhinged conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
So who do you trust, right? You can't trust the legacy media outlets because that was their narrative. Right-wing media, tends to go in the direction of it was definitely a lab leak, but they have their own biases. So what do you trust?
Yeah.
Who do you trust? Even the intelligence community in the United States is divided on this issue. And it's not just about the coronavirus pandemic, guys. It's about every single political issue. I don't know who to trust.
Yeah, so I'm gonna make it worse before I make it better.
Okay, go ahead.
So first of all, the main organization that put out a report saying it was definitely from a natural occurrence was the World Health Organization. Normally fairly reputable and trustworthy, except for the fact that in this particular case, China demanded that half the people on the panel be from China. And so it was a very, very questionable finding, but it was reported as if it was legitimate.
That's right.
Right?
That's exactly right.
And so that makes it worse. Second of all, you think, well, okay, now it's pretty settled. I mean, you got the Energy Department, your FBI even saying more so that they think it was a lab leak. And come on, the Wuhan virology lab's right there. What are the chances it's not? Okay, but be careful of the new reports too. Why? Because now all of a sudden you've got Republicans like the one we just showed you in the beginning, and Democrats who are more hawkish and inclined towards neoconservatism coming out saying this is the fault of the Chinese Communist Party. So remember we've been reporting about how we're starting to do more warmongering towards China.
Yep.
The Pelosi visit, the arms sales to Taiwan, the Chinese spy balloons, and the other rando balloons we shot down as if it was they were Chinese, etc. So now here comes the war drums.
Yep.
So be careful, not just with, hey, what was COVID, where did it come from? That's very important. We have to track that down scientifically because for the next virus that comes out, it's critical that we know the truth, the medical scientific truth behind how it emerged.
Yeah, so that's some major copium, right? They didn't want to agree with the right, okay, and Trump in regards to where the virus may have came from. And that's why they kind of went along with the legacy media, even though the legacy media had no real evidence to back up their claims, right? And it seemed like as time progressed, it became more and more likely that the virus may have leaked from a lab. No. The right agrees with that. Trump agrees with that. You're a right-wing conspiracy theorist if you believe in that. And now the cope is that, well, this being confirmed or starting to be confirmed, well, that's because the politicians want to go to war with China, right? This is what they're saying, okay? Again, just more cope to not admit that, hey, Trump was right, okay? They don't want to say that. Those are 3 words they don't want to say, okay? Trump was right. But hey, it's clear to me that based off how China is reacting to some of these findings, they're pissed, okay? And they don't want people saying this. They don't want people to think that maybe they're responsible for essentially shutting the world down. I mean, just look at how they're threatening Elon Musk, who basically has kind of went along with the lab leak theory as well, too. Take a look.
Oh, well, the reminder today was directed towards Elon Musk. The Tesla founder had been retweeting posts promoting the theory that coronavirus originated from a Wuhan lab. Well, the issue is very sensitive here in China. And so the Communist Party paper, the Global Times, warned on its social media site that he could be breaking the pot of China This is a Chinese saying that's similar to biting the hand that feeds you. Now, this warning comes as Chinese officials, both on a high level as well as on a lower level of the government, are really pulling out all the stops to try to attract U.S. investment into China. The directive has come all the way from the top, from President Xi Jinping, who's been saying that there should be greater effort to attract more and welcome more foreign capital as well as foreign investment.
Yeah, so China is essentially threatening Elon Musk and telling him, hey, don't accuse us or don't implicate us in this pandemic and how it happened, okay? Don't go along with what seems to be true, okay? Because we have Tesla factories, right? And we basically own you, right? This is what China is saying to Elon Musk. But with that being said, what I want to say is this, right? The point of, the video, and I think that, what a lot of people are missing here is that these findings coming from Biden's energy department, right? It's just another prime example of why you can't have government-sponsored censorship and why big tech companies should not try to participate in this type of censorship on behalf of the government or for so-called public health or trying to fight so-called medical misinformation. Because the science on this stuff is always evolving. And when you have certain rules and regulations about what you can and can't say about science that's always evolving, chances are you're going to be wrong, okay? There are people who lost their livelihoods, who were banned from the internet, kicked off of YouTube, kicked off Twitter, Instagram, whatever, for making claims that we believe today are true. And that's where, there's a whole lot of shame in this, is that none of those people are going to be punished. The people who actively participated in the censorship, right, who ruin people's lives to try to censor information that, again, today we believe is true. And again, that's my biggest problem with this. The government, big tech, none of these authorities have any business in the business of censoring people when it comes to this subject or any of this stuff. And to me, the revelations that seem to suggest that, hey, more than likely this virus came from a lab, this is a water is wet moment for me, right? I think where the real bombshell is going to come in is all the people who worshiped at Fauci's feet, okay, to, maybe eventually find out that he oversaw or maybe even approved of taxpayer money funding the development of this virus. Again, I don't know if that's true or not, but this has been a debate in Congress, mainly between Rand Paul and Dr. Fauci, and the mainstream liberal media has smeared Rand Paul for questioning Fauci, okay, that Lord and Savior. You can't question Fauci or any of this stuff, right? Again, the real bombshell moment will be, okay, was this funded with taxpayer dollars, right? That's when we're really going to find out some real truth behind the origins of this pandemic and this virus, right? That's what I'm really waiting for. Again, this is a water is wet moment, okay? But the overall point is that these findings coming out is exactly why we should be participating in this type of censorship, period. It's not just this. Again, when it came to some of the stuff about the vaccine, mask, other things as well, too, when it came to the virus, a lot of people were censored for making statements that essentially turned out to be true. Again, it really is a shame that this is where we're at in society, in American society, where, freedom of speech, right? Speech that, again, is actually true or eventually proves to be true was censored. It was not allowed at one point in time because the powers that be didn't want that to be allowed, right? Because, in some cases, Trump said it, and therefore, it can't be true because we can't agree with anything that Trump says, right? Trump is always wrong. Amazing how that works. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.